Well, I think it's finally time to talk about what's become a very contentious topic in games right now, and that's G4TV. Now, I had originally talked about G4TV when they were teasing its return, when their Twitter accounts went active, and I was pretty excited from the nostalgia of G4 back in 2002 and 2003. I have very vivid memories of that, and in some cases it's inspired some of the stuff here on the channel, like Newswave. But after they returned with their new version of G4 and I took a look at it, I thought, you know what? They really don't have much of a chance here in this current landscape. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So first, let's take a look here. This was over on Kotaku, and several other outlets were getting more information as time went on. Basically, G4TV hit with major layoffs less than a year after coming back. And they cited initially 20 to 30 staff members who have been laid off. And it was kind of out of the blue, reportedly, to where I assume executives showed up and just started laying people off. And then we got to a position where people on air were leaving. And to me, the writing's on the wall for G4TV. I think they're going to get down to a skeleton crew and just see how far they can take this whole thing. And something tells me it's not going to be very long. But there are a lot of reasons for it. I know one of the big reason that seems to go around right now has to do with on-air personalities. Some of them, not all, some, were very adversarial, and they have a place on almost every thumbnail that I see now for G4TV. And that seems to be where like the primary focus is around this. But as I thought more and more about what I really enjoyed for G4 back in the day, I realized it's not going to work now. And I wanted to go over some specific examples, by the way. But the elephant in the room, yes, the on-air personalities, some of them got a bit out there with rants and got to the position where they were saying, don't watch it, which is a terrible idea to say something like that. And I mean, there's near limitless things you can watch when it comes to gaming. So the moment they open that door and say, you're not welcome here, go watch something else, yeah, I mean, they're going to walk through the door and go watch something else. It's not like back in the day in 2003 where G4 was it on TV. If they said, hey, don't watch it if you don't like it, I'd probably still leave G4TV on because I'd be like, well, yeah, but I mean, X plays up next. So now it's just, all right, well, I guess I'll click off and go to the next thing on YouTube or Twitch. But really, G4 showed up with kind of an archaic plan, I would say. Like, they didn't really bring anything new to the table. And back in the day, when they first showed up, they absolutely did. In fact, they played a critical role, I would say, in taking gaming and really bringing it to the mainstream audience. And I would say make gaming feel like it really belonged in the overall entertainment space. Because up to that point, gaming was still kind of viewed as the nerdy thing to do. And that was, I mean, I'm talking like late 90s. And when we saw G4 show up and an entire channel on TV was 24 hours dedicated to gaming, it was a big deal. And I remember when we were first finding out about this, my parents, they told me that there's this gaming channel that they're going to try. It was in like the latest TV guide or something. I think it was even right on the cover as the G4 logo and all this stuff. And eventually we had the TV guide channel, the TV guide channel. Make you feel old, where if you're unaware, maybe you're a little younger, we didn't always have the guide button on a remote. We'd have to go to a channel that was dedicated to scrolling listings for the different channels, and that's how you would figure out what is on like channel 33 or something. You'd go there and you'd wait for it to scroll through, and if you missed it, you waited like 2 or 3 minutes for it to scroll all the way back up. But eventually they cut it in half, and they would sell advertising on that top half. And at one point, they ran a minute or two ad about G4. And it was just this incredible thing. I'm like, what? There's going to be a channel that's all about video games. Which now I think back on it, it's very strange that really my parents were talking about gaming because they never did. But it was like, oh, this channel is going to just cover gaming. How are they going to do that? And they came up with some really interesting ways to do this. There were some genuinely unique shows like Portal, which you hear Portal now and you're thinking about obviously the game that Valve created, but it was way different. They were like going between games, and I remember seeing EverQuest there where you'd follow this character through, and they basically did role playing there like we do now with things like Grand Theft Auto. But I think looking back on it, these shows just would not function well today. And yeah, some of that has to do with just because YouTube and Twitch and all this. But like, I thought about the 4 shows that I really enjoyed from G4 at that time in the early 2000s, and I came up with a list of X-Play, which was essentially a gaming magazine from your favorite store, but they acted it out in front of you. They had talks with different developers. They had reviews baked in that would be like 3 or 4 minutes long, and they had gameplay, previews, basically that. So you wouldn't have to go to the store to buy the magazine. You would just turn on the G4 channel, and you would be able to watch X-Play and get all kinds of information from Morgan Webb and Adam Sessler. The other show that I enjoyed was Cheat. This was another big one because, once again, you would get some pretty cool strategies and cheat codes for different games. And even if you didn't have the game yet, they would show you how it all worked. At the time, we would go on game FAQs, and it would be a community-driven effort to type out and try to guide you through things like dungeons. And sometimes we would try to draw the dungeons with just letters and symbols and stuff, and it always looked terrible. But in Cheat, they would have directly captured footage, which at that time was a big deal, and they would walk you through step by step how to do different things. And it was in some pretty cool games like God Hand. They talked to you about how to do different things there and destroy all humans, and they really got in depth with all of it. Seriously, at points, some of the cheats to go over took like 5 or 10 minutes, but they were very in-depth with it, and it was a lot of fun, even if I didn't own the game, just to hear about some of the secrets that were in them. Another one I liked was Icons, which, I mean, has been reproduced many, many times on YouTube. It was a documentary series with a hint of drama that was involved, where they try to tell a story while still keeping it to the facts, and then also bringing in people who were involved with it at the time.
This is the story of the Sega Dreamcast.
Here is a system that was ahead of its time.
I think one of the best episodes to look up still has to do with the original Nintendo, as they kind of chronicled the crash of gaming and then basically the rebirth of it and rise of the NES in the States. And it was just a really fascinating thing. But the funniest one of all, and this is, I'm not kidding, legitimately one of my favorite shows from back then, was Cinematech. All it was directly captured footage of games, and they just played it back to back to back to back. That was it. It was that simple because it was such a new idea, whereas now it's like, it's all over YouTube. You can easily look up entire playthroughs of a game, and all it really was doing was showing us 5 to 10 minute snippets of a game on Cinematech, and it was mind-blowing because I didn't have access to a lot of games then. I would get games maybe 3 times a year if I'm lucky. It'd be my birthday, Christmas, and if I had a good report card or something, right? And that was it. And you had to decide. You had to be like, okay, which game am I getting? Here, though, you just kind of sit back and watch all of these games played out in front of you. And it was at the time where the GameCube, the Xbox, and the PS2 were still kind of fresh on the market. So you would see some visually impressive games on your Tube TV, and it was just a really cool time. A simple concept now that we think about it, one that's archaic even, because we expect there to be a lot more when it comes to our gameplay footage on YouTube now, but at the time it was actually mind-blowing. And I know a lot of people think back and remember Attack of the Show as like their favorite thing to watch on G4, but for me, these 4 shows were more interesting. I would look forward to these more than Attack of the Show. I would still watch Attack of the Show when it was on, but actually wouldn't go out of my way as much to make sure I was there in front of the TV when a new episode was playing. I would just catch it if there was a rerun or something like that. But you can kind of look up and down these 4 choices that I have and realize why they wouldn't work currently. They're all redone over and over again on YouTube with, I mean, to be honest, personalities that are probably better than I remember these ones from back then. I mean, Cinematech didn't even have anything, and you can watch entire playthroughs of games now. Icons is technically done better currently with people doing all kinds of documentaries on a vast number of topics. Cheat, people just go through games very thoroughly with all kinds of strategies and little things you can do in there, and it's just you just type up the game and there it is. At XPlay, there are a lot of opinion pieces and news shows on YouTube. I mean, I do one with Newswave. So with that in mind, when G4TV came back and they didn't really have a lot that was new or creative or that interesting necessarily, it was going to be tough to compete with YouTube and Twitch. They did go out and they looked to get like YouTube videos from different personalities who were successful on the platform and air them on TV, which, hey, if you were someone who was able to do that, I think that's awesome. I know Scott had announced, I think it was at Too Many Games, he announced that he was going to TV, and then he eventually said, I'm going to G4. And all it was him basically having his episodes cut to make sense in an hour time slot, and then just have G4 air them. And I remember he was telling me about this, and I said, Scott, get all the money you can from Comcast. Absolutely. And a lot of that was they have a certain amount of runway that they can burn through before they have to reevaluate things. So I said, hey, get what you can from G4, especially since you don't have to relocate to take part in it. And looking at what they did here with G4 TV and some of their strategies when it comes to syndication of YouTube videos and live streams and all this, all I can think of is they were trying to basically ride the wave of nostalgia and bring people who have mostly unplugged from cable TV back to them. Well, originally they were targeting 12 to 28, that age group back when they first did G4. And I mean, think about it, that was 20 years ago. So now you think about it, and they're trying to get maybe people in their 30s and early 40s to be like, oh, I remember G4. Let me go back to that and see what it's all about. And then you tune into a live stream and it's not what you remember. And then you check it out on cable TV and it's still not really hitting that nostalgia bone very well. And then things kind of spiraled out of control with some of the rants and stuff that came out of it. And then you see the overhead with 200 people who are employed. And yeah, it just unfortunately it wasn't something that was going to last for apparently more than a year from what we're seeing here. But at this point, I kind of think G4TV is slowly going to kind of fizzle out. And I guess something they could try, I mean, I'm just throwing this out there as a suggestion. If you still have a lot of archived footage of older episodes of Icons or seriously Cinematech or XPlay or any of these shows, why not remaster them? We have AI upscaling and stuff. You could try to move them up to 1080p and these different things and just try airing them and see what happens. It'd be kind of funny if they did that and all of a sudden their ratings started to climb a little bit. It's not sustainable because eventually you'll run out of episodes, but I do notice that on YouTube, some of those videos have quite a few views of people going back to remember the old days of G4, not necessarily the new days. But let me know what you guys think about all of this down below with G4 TV. Were you originally excited for it because you remember it how I do in the early 2000s? And what did you think about everything that's happened up until this point? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.